Oops. Well, hopefully this could continue with meeting in person, so. That one there. Think about that. Did you happen to get over to Catamount to check? Yeah, I just thought it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every page saw, so I could hear them always, yeah.
Oh, I see.
So we were talking about nest box.
Did they mow?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Monday mowed, yeah, they mowed it. Their little 3-day window, I guess they're gonna
Mm.
have for.
Yeah.
No, the weather has been tricky.
Yeah, this is good for me in the video too, because you can't see what's on over there. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I can, when we're not sharing screen, I can make it bigger, or actually, I should do this.
Oh, I have a gallery now, so that's.
Sign down.
Oh, Gary's. Yeah, so I think the only person who's not here now is Eric.
Okay. Great. Okay, we can start.
Recording in progress.
Oh, wait, no, you don't want to do that.
Leave meeting.
And mute yourself if you could.
Oh, yeah. It looked like I was muted.
It happens every time, but now
Okay.
there's Eric.
Have even more time to do all the extra stuff now.
All right. All right, welcome everyone. This is Carl's last meeting, so we have time at the end to chat with Carl. Thank you, Carl, for everything you've done. for us.
Thanks for making this such a festive occasion.
And Simon, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Looking forward to working with you guys.
And Melinda, thank you so much for everything you've done.
It's been a pleasure. I'll miss you guys, but
You won't be far.
I won't be far, and maybe you guys, maybe you can have some joint meetings with the Energy Committee.
Oh,
Just, I don't know, just to talk about mutual goals.
Cover sequestration goals.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. All right, I already called the meeting to order. Is there any public comment?
Nothing for me.
Thank you, Reed. Okay, the only thing I wanted to say is, Terry has organized a meeting tomorrow at Catamount where Ethan Tapper, the Chittenden County Forester, is going to use an arbor jet to treat ash trees on the night loop.
Yeah.
And there are some nice big ones there, and we're targeting females also. And I'm going to learn how to use it.
Oh,
Because I can use it as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, let's take a look at the minutes of May 18th.
do we need to, just before we do that, add the Vermont State Wetlands Map amendments to the
Yes.
agenda?
Thank you.
So just to clarify, that is the state of Vermont are updating their wetlands maps to include sort of wetlands that they know exist, but are not mapped, and also reconcile some errors. So they're running a consultation on that, which runs until July 1st. So you can comment. So we're just going to pop that on the end of the agenda so that people are aware.
Okay, thank you so much, Simon.
Mm.
Does anyone have comment?
The very last line, the date of approval. It's the only thing I saw.
Good catch.
Carl, you always catch those. We're gonna have to look for those.
Come back now and then guess catcher.
Yeah. I'll move approval of the minutes as amended.
I'll second it.
You any further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of May 18th as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Kim, is there anyone abstaining?
Yes, I abstained because I wasn't present at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Gary. All right. Okay, the minutes have been accepted. Okay, let's see, what time is it? Oh, we're early. Is Brian, do we need Brian to be on? Is he? Or is this just, we're looking at this? Okay. We can start our discussion. There was a request received from Brian Forrest and asking about, I don't think he used the word arborist, but asking if there was somebody who, instead of Public Works, could, with a little more knowledge of the trees. I will just read it for you. Given that our trees are very precious to us, that we are in a climate crisis and that trees are our best method of carbon sequestration, we believe that our town trees need to be cared for by a person first, both in trees and the environment. To this end, we believe that the select board should appoint a person capable of performing these two functions, leaving the job of tree removal to the Public Works Department. So a couple things people might not be aware of. So Bruce Ford is the tree warden. Whenever I send him information I get through Vermont Community Urban and Forestry Program, he's aware of it. He has taken the tree warden course. And he is always aware of grants that are available for towns. And I just wanted to mention that. Since he is currently the tree warden, I'm not sure how many towns, I know Burlington obviously has a number of arborists, but, or, you know, that's another paid position, I assume, rather than volunteer. So, any comments on this letter?
Well, I was gonna ask the question, this, anticipate that this would be a paid voluntary position. And if, and how would this person interact with Public Works? Yeah, I mean, it seems like kind of a good idea. And one way to have that expertise available, but it seems like there's a lot of details that would have to be worked out. Where would that person come from? What would be the relationship with Public Works? What might be the relationship with the county forest? There's a lot of questions.
Read.
One thing that we could consider on this topic is it may not necessarily need to be a full-time or part-time position. It could be in a consulting fashion. Could be as needed to create plans. And I think folks, I've talked to a few folks who are kind of in favor of this idea. One of the things that's come up is not so much the reactive things that this role would do, like pruning if there's damage to trees and things like that, so much as the proactive aspect of going out and making plans for the trees along the rec path, making plans for looking at tree species across the town and making sure that we're that we have a good diversity of trees and things like that. So some of the more proactive planning activities, more so than so much their damage or recommending what types of trees might be best in different areas, things that public works perhaps might not be able to prioritize spending time on.
Right.
Two thoughts.
So right now, if Public Works is in charge of that, it might be useful to ask Bruce what kind of help he needs, if any.
Right, well, he actually, I think, had said to Matt, I think we need a town arborist. Yeah.
I was thinking, possibly it could be, I talked to you, Laura, a little bit about it. It could be, maybe shared with another town. A person, if it is a hired position, where maybe Richmond, Heinsberg, if they're thinking along the same lines, maybe. Have that person, like you said, kind of consulting arborist. So that would be less.
And Eric has the same.
Thank you. Eric, go ahead.
Thanks, Laura and Melinda. So I have I guess a couple of questions on this, but also just a I guess a procedural thing as we move into these hybrid meetings. If I think I can see everybody on the screen, but I'm just confirming that everyone that's in the room is I'm seeing Simon. Hello, Simon. Nice to meet you. And Reed, Terry, Carl, Laura, and Melinda. Got the whole crowd. All right, thanks. I guess so. A couple thoughts. So, in his request here, Brian references we a couple of times. Is this request coming from someone more than Brian? Like I know Brian's part of a sustainable Williston group and others. And then I guess just from my perspective, I feel like it'd be helpful to actually have a conversation with Brian to hear about more about his concerns. And just for more context beyond the couple of sentences that are in this request. I can think about a number of reasons why it might be interesting to have someone like this on the town staff. Although I gotta say, I like where Terry was just headed to with sharing information. And maybe it's something that the regional planning commission could also contribute to, or even somehow to contribute. All the towns could contribute to a person that would work with the county forester as well. But I guess just generally, I'd be curious to hear what so we're in a climate crisis and trees are a good method of covering sequestration, but trees in town, individual trees in town, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding how the street trees, if that's what he's referencing, are going to contribute significantly to carbon sequestration. I can think of a lot of other reasons to manage street trees in town beyond carbon sequestration, though, which is why I'm kind of I like this idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
I like the idea of having somebody who is an expert in trees, an arborist, or somebody with a forestry background making the decisions about trees. Like, I think it's great that Bruce did all of the tree warden training and that he's really hooked in with urban and community forestry, but I don't think that's the same thing as somebody in the forestry world. I don't think that's the same thing as having a background in that discipline. And then to Eric's point, and Gary can maybe can add to this a little bit. I'm not saying this is what is happening in the case of this letter. I don't think it is, but there is just a growing movement that's called the pro-forestation movement that's really focused on trees to sequester carbon, and it's like pretty anti-cut in like almost all circumstances. And so, and it is very cherry picking of the science and its arguments. And so I think it's just a good thing for us to all be aware of. There are like growing groups around the state and in New England more broadly that are advocating for like more, I would say, hands off or no forest management at all. And we should just be aware of it. It's definitely a trend that has, been in the American West for a long time. Like Sierra Club has a zero cut policy. They object to forest thinning on every wildfire project I've ever been on. I think my personal view as a professional is that it's very detrimental. And so I don't think that's what's happening in this letter, but just to Eric's point of like, I don't really understand their argument of like how this, sorry, Ellie's talking to me about the link to carbon sequestration. I think that's a growing argument that is being articulated by the pro-forestation movement. And Gary, I think maybe they've even cited some of your papers misconstruing the findings. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think can you guys hear me okay? I can't tell with these. Anyways, I think you spoke that clearly, Kim. And I think another good reason to have an arborist is, not only the training, but I think they'd have a lot more time than Bruce has to concentrate on this stuff. Cause I get the feeling that he's just like everybody else in town, is like too many things to do and have to pick and choose what they spend their time on. So I think if he didn't have to spend time on this, it might be a benefit to him to have more free time for other things. I also like Terry's idea of sharing that position maybe among a few different towns. I think that sounds interesting.
Okay, thank you. Terry, wasn't the tree warden of Milton coming tomorrow morning?
Yeah, right, Chris Dolmer, I hope so. Yeah.
Okay, because we could maybe talk to him a bit about,
Yeah.
some of these questions too.
Okay, yeah, so if he's there, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you know, is that volunteer position? You know, it must be.
Tree warden, he's a
Yeah.
volunteer.
Okay.
Okay, and he has a forestry background.
Mhm. And he's kind of he pretty much has been focusing on treating the ash trees for emerald ash trees.
Yeah.
Lately, but he's a forester or arborist, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's certainly no shortage of things for an arborist to do, and it's going to get increasingly worse with new invasives and things like that. So I think it would pay to have such a position.
Yeah, and just to understand urban forestry also and street trees and how they can add to, especially the streets in the growth center.
Mhm.
About changing it.
Right, because the town is in the process of taking out all those green ash trees and then ultimately replacing them, I guess, with different trees.
It'd be nice, somebody could recommend.
Yeah. One other thing I was gonna bring up is, I know Tapen, my dad recently volunteered to Bruce, hey, can I help with pruning some of the fruit trees, some of the crab apples and stuff. That require a little bit more careful pruning to not introduce disease. A lot of branches have previously been cut with long stubs and they can't heal over.
Right.
So you gone around and done that here next to the annex over at church. And so there are trees that are not street trees. And they're sort of like park trees-ish.
Yeah.
They're on town land, but they're maybe near the rec path, near the facilities, at the entrance to the rec path, that type of thing that might get lost in the shuffle. Compared to
Right.
street trees.
All right, great. So action item is we'll talk to
Chris Dolmer.
Chris Dahmer if he's there tomorrow, and if not, maybe we can even call him and just chat with him about what he does, and then we can maybe come up with if people are interested, we can come up with a description and see if there's anyone out there who would like to be a volunteer.
Yeah, we could seek volunteers. We can also come up with a description and talk to neighboring towns and see if they would be interested in.
Right.
And if we can't find a volunteer, if we need to do a paid position as a something that the towns can share.
Right.
I'm sure Ethan might have some,
Yeah.
information. Maybe he works with other towns that do have.
Okay.
Does anybody know what Brian might have had in mind beyond the paragraph that he sent in?
Not at this point. little more.
Yeah. It sounds like might be focused on the carbon sequestration issue.
I would guess based on his passion for that type of thing. I guess he's thinking more about the carbon stuff, but I've heard from other people who are looking for more beauty
Right,
in the trees around town, and other people who are just worried about health of trees,
mhm,
and other people who want to see more planning and less reactive. So,
right, that makes sense. Okay, so Simon, can we put that on a future agenda?
Yeah.
Where we can fit it in.
Do we feel like there would be value in some type of outreach event that like examined the state of the research about forest carbon? Like, we have a lot of really great folks in the state that do research on that, and I don't know how busy they are, but it does seem like a topic that people are increasingly interested in for municipalities and public land, and also for their own woodlots. And it is definitely connected to this later conversation on our agenda about current use. And I think it's like such a complex topic that the trade-offs are not clear to people, and like when to make decisions are not clear to people, and like what management might be appropriate is not clear to people. And I'm just thinking like, wow, like what if we invited like Caitlin Littlefield, lives in Richmond, she's on their conservation commission, she's a scholar in this area, was Tony D'Amato's postdoc. I wonder if she would come and give a talk. Like, we have some folks who are like real sharp and expert in this that I think could be great at communicating and maybe like dispelling some myths or helping people guide decision-making processes. And I don't know, just a thought.
I also
Yeah, I
think
think-
that tomorrow, if you guys can talk to Ethan Tapper about this, because Ethan's way up on it too, and he might have some ideas of how to, inform people of these different options and let that kind of thing. And also Tony D'Amato is in town, and he's, he and Caitlin have done a lot of that work together, and he's pretty well versed in that stuff.
I definitely think the current use topic, talking about something like a town arborist role, and also educating about the changes to current use and ways to manage forests in Williston would be potentially good public outreach once we are ready, to help inform people of how they could leverage the changes in the current use program.
Mhm.
We could have a speaker, we could have a community forum about the change. There's people to consider.
It's a great idea.
The town doesn't have land enrolled in current use, does it? They're not eligible. Or are they?
No, before the town purchased Catamount, it was enrolled in current use, and the town withdrew it from current use. I think because municipalities are not eligible.
That was my understanding, was it was private landowners only.
Yeah.
All right, those are all great thoughts. And Simon, are you our secretary?
Yeah, I'm making some notes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you felt comfortable in that role, or if we should nominate a secretary, or,
It's okay, I can take minutes.
okay. Okay, great, thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. If anybody has further comments, you can send us an email before we meet tomorrow morning also.
8 o'clock, not
8 o'clock, right,
Okay.
yeah, I saw
I
that.
thought it
message.
was 8:30, but it's 8,
I think
o'clock.
that Ethan had said 8:30.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm glad you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Still a
So,
little bit early.
You can, if you want, you can do the officer nomination and then, skip ahead to that if you want.
okay. I know that we have been doing 1-year chair positions, 1-year vice chair positions. And if you read my message, Terry is going to continue as chair of Catamount for another year. Pat who is on the Catamount committee is leaving, and he was the vice chair, so. And you have a lot of projects going on right now that
Yeah.
you feel like you should follow through with
See
them.
it through, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing all that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Have you
And-
advertised that spot, and have we advertised Carl's spot? Like, should we be, as a commission, recruiting for positions at Catamount and here?
So the manager's office, it has posted those openings. I'm not sure if they've gotten applications for Conservation Commission. I know that they've gotten an application for the Catamount Committee. So yeah, they're kind of in charge of the, the posting and recruitment.
Got it.
You have to be careful if you want to be treasurer, because it's a permanent position.
Oh, I was not nominating myself to be treasurer. I was just curious about filling the empty spots. I should not, you do not want me to be treasurer.
Not exactly an exhaustive position.
So, Carl, tell us what you do. You get the information from,
Well, it's a lot less than I used to do, because Melinda's been doing most of it in terms of, it used to be I was more involved in the budget than I've been recently. And the most of this, the budget.
yeah.
At the most, well, I review it with it. The other main thing that I've done on that job is just kept track of all the expenditure from the environmental reserve fund.
Mhm,
So, yeah, and we're running calculations of that.
mhm.
That would be good, I think, to keep up to see, just so that we have in front of us all the money that the town has put in, all the money that we raised, and what was spent on which projects,
Mhm.
and how much was leveraged for each project.
Okay,
So I can pass that on to whoever wants to take that over.
okay, great. What account is that in? It's just kind of in the town accounts, like the amount.
The ERF, it has its own account.
Oh, it does, yeah. Mhm. All right. And it's just a savings account, so, or,
Sure. It's it does, it's an interest bearing. account,
okay,
so We do have some interest, not that much, but
okay.
some interest. And it's managed by, never remember her name, it's the town.
Shirley,
Surely, okay.
yeah, she sends you,
Yeah, she sends
summaries.
periodic reports, and, she has got a summary of it all laid out to it. Not exactly the same as my summary, but pretty close.
Okay, great.
So
Okay,
so
so,
whoever takes it over, and, work with Shirley, they can figure it out.
okay. Okay, sounds good. So, and I am not planning on continuing as chair. I figure if people are, it seems like it's a 1-year chair position, and I think it's good to continue in that way, because then it doesn't get overwhelming for anyone.
You've
Because
done a great job, Laura.
oh yeah, I tend to say yes to things. Oh, of course, I'll be a chair for another year, but.
Not this time.
It's a relay race.
So, I guess the next step is, are there nominations for, we have chair, vice chair, and treasurer? Or do people need to be nominated, or can they just volunteer?
Well, I guess
They have to accept
I
the
would ask the
nomination.
question, is anybody interested? And then you
Yeah.
can, then you can take motions or whatever.
Okay,
But
okay, is anyone interested in any of those 3 positions?
I'd be happy to be nominated either for treasurer or for vice chair.
Okay, great. Thanks,
And
Rita.
in the future, I'd be happy to serve as a chair again.
Yeah, actually, yes, I feel the same way. I'd be happy to serve as the chair again. So, I mean, could easily become vice chair when we would become chair. Anyone else?
If the expectation is, if the bar is lower than where it's been set by Laura, I'd be happy to serve as chair for a year.
You set the bar as low as you want it, Eric.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. And it sounds like, okay, if we had Eric as chair and Rita as vice chair, it sounds like the position of treasurer is actually fairly easy. You get some emails from Shirley and you keep a running tab of what's going on.
And review the budget with Simon now would be, I guess.
Right.
We can, in the past, what we've done, unless there's additional volunteers or nominations, we had somebody make a motion to nominate everybody in one motion and just approve all of one motion, just
Right.
for context. That may be easiest.
Mhm.
Is anybody interested in treasurer?
I could give it a go. I did it for an EMT class. Back in the day, but it sounds like Shirley does quite a bit of it. For the
And
most part.
It's really
Puts to the
mostly
ER.
just. You know, it's really, I mean, I would say at this point that it's sort of an optional thing, and it's mostly like sort of so that somebody on the Conservation Commission has an idea of what's going on in the budget.
It could also be a shared, the vice chair could also be the treasurer. Since the vice chair mostly is there in case the chair can't make a meeting or to fill that role. So since it's a lighter load, we could consider having the vice chair also serve as treasurer.
So either way, I would give it a try, treasurer, for a year and see, or go with that.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so we would need someone, a nomination for Eric Howe to be chair, for Reed Carr to be vice chair, and for Terry Marin to be treasurer.
And so move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kim. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the nomination signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Does anyone abstain or object? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was easier than
That's
I
pretty
thought.
painless, right? Made easier by Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
You are relieved.
Yeah, right. Not yet.
Not yet, you're more agenda items.
Yeah. It is time for our next agenda item. Looks like we have Jamie Simpson on.
So I guess. Should be.
Yeah.
Pass it already.
But anyway.
This is 2211, right?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And is Jamie the person?
Jamie's the project engineer, the applicant isn't on it.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Hi.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Laura Meyer. I'm chair, and if people have comments, if they could just introduce themselves. Jamie, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so am I to present this project to the Conservation Commission, or has that been already done at some point?
You can go ahead and introduce this. We haven't seen this before.
Okay, so this is a planned development for the applicant, Cody Rice. The location is 669 Essex Road, which is Route 2A. And currently, as you can see from the existing condition site plan on the screen now, there's an existing farmhouse on the site, as well as an existing barn. And there's also a trailer unit in the backyard that is currently being rented. And the lot is more or less vacant, other than those items. And we've been out on site. We've done some soil investigations to try and determine, what the feasibility would be for potential stormwater. And we understand that the site is served by wastewater, sanitary sewer, and also municipal water. And so the project consists of residential development of 29 units. And you can see what that may look like on the next sheet, which is the option 1, if you will. And so the first option that we were trying to consider was an access to the site at the southern end of the project, and then entering through an access road with housing along that main access road with an avocado shaped turnaround cul-de-sac at the end, at the northern end. And again, this is for 29 additional units, and maintain the farmhouse on the site and the barn, but the trailer would disappear. You'll see a little odd amoeba shaped polygon in the center of the parcel, and that is preserved or going to be utilized for potential stormwater conveyance and treatment from runoff from the buildings. And then we plan to utilize in this design, likely in the northern corner, for wastewater pump station infrastructure to get it to the municipal sewer system. That's not shown on this plan, but that is the idea. And then we have on the next option sheet, this is actually the same version. It just shows property line information. And this is all very preliminary, but it just gives an idea of what those property lines could look like, extending to the center line of the road. And then we have on the following sheet, a second option, which I recently understood that the turnaround at the southern end of the parcel here would not be accepted per town of Williston regulations. So that would have to be redesigned to be the avocado shaped cul-de-sac. But more or less, the concept here was if VTrans does not allow an access point at the southern end of the parcel, then we've moved it to the northern end of the parcel and allowed single point access up there with a turnaround area, and again, residential housing. This design incorporates more of the duplex units versus single family housing. But again, stormwater in the middle of the parcel flowing northward, and then maintaining the farmhouse and the barn that's currently on site. The trailer again would disappear. So that's more or less it in a nutshell. And again, this sheet is property line identification just for visual purposes.
All right, does anybody want to make a comment on these diagrams, or should we go to findings and recommendations?
Is this in the RZD?
It is. Yeah, this is in the RZD. All right, let's go to findings.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. I'm sorry, did Jamie, did he mention where the wetlands are on the property?
So right now, there's been no identified wetlands. We haven't had a consultant out there yet. We have been in contact with the Vermont State ecologist, wetland ecologist. So we plan to have a desktop review of the site, and then if warranted, we'll have a wetland specialist visit the site to identify any wetlands and wetland buffers associated with that.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I read the narrative too quickly. I see the bullet about the wetland, but missed the potential wetland part in the southeast.
There were a couple of letters that came in that were part of the applicant material. One from the Department of Public Works, which said that option 2 was not allowed. Why is that not allowed?
Oh, comments.
It was the turnaround, is that the
Yeah,
issue?
it was that hammerhead turnaround.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right,
Okay, and then, then the fire department sent in a letter commenting on some difficulties with street width and parking, and their request, I don't think they made it mandatory, but they said you really should have 2 access points, not just the 1 access point. So
yeah,
I want to be part of the discussion, I guess.
so yeah, so the fire department recommendations, there's no official ordinance in the town of Williston that establishes requirements for fire safety or what have you. They are sort of part of the review process, and they pass along their recommendations, but their recommendations don't have any legal standing thus far. And their recommendation actually for 2 accesses sort of runs counter to the bylaw the bylaw standard of consolidating access. So there has been some tension there in the past and in these projects.
Yeah, one issue we've had in the Hamlet neighborhood is just the challenges of on-street parking and street widths and stuff. And so that's just something to keep in mind as you move forward with this proposal, is that the combination of access and street parking and emergency services is a challenge to get the balance right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And, I know the applicant would be willing to adjust this design to better suit, fire department access and safety vehicle access. I think we show a 24-foot width now. We have no issues going up to 27 or wider to accommodate some on-street parking. Yeah, I mean, the access part is kind of going to be predetermined by V-Trans. They have a lot of clout into how they allow access onto the road. So they're going to tell us what they'll allow. That's a challenging section of road anyway to pull on and off of. So I'm sure they'll have an opinion. Absolutely.
And there were a couple of neighbor letters there that raised the issue of traffic and this project having an adverse effect on an already difficult traffic situation. And they also raised the issue of drainage. I know our recommendations address that, but they were concerned about the drainage of this property, particularly north toward the Nazarene Church, which is right on the border.
Can we go back to the design that had the entrance at the south? Of course, now we're getting outside of Conservation Commission's purview, but I just was, okay, it was not lined up with River Code.
Yeah, I was thinking there could be a stoplight there.
Yeah, I know people don't like adding stoplights, but for safety, having entrances.
It looks like that farmhouse.
It's pretty much right across, yeah.
And Jamie, what was the decision to leave the farmhouse? Just, is it because it's in good shape? There are people living there, or can you tell me why you're leaving the farmhouse?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is in pretty good condition overall, and the barn is in pretty good shape overall as well. It's established residence. There are people living there now, and it'd be the client, the applicant would prefer to have it remain, and continue to be part of the landscape because it is an established location.
And it
One thing
looks nice.
I will also add is that we're looking into permissions to potentially utilize the current curb cut to the south of our proposed access. We're trying to talk to property owners there to determine if we can utilize that curb cut instead of adding a new curb cut where we propose it now, as shown on this sheet. Just to help simplify the number of entrances onto 2A. But we would have to reconfigure the lots a little bit, obviously, if we did end up getting permission for that.
Where is that curb cut?
I'm gonna bring up Google Earth because I'm,
So at the bottom of the sheet, you can see a little bit of a tree line there, and then there's a driveway that's shaded. And we would like to be able to use that. We'd have to obviously upgrade the entrance a little bit. But it'd be nice to be able to use that location as an entry point because the road is already currently set up for egress and ingress at that location.
Also moves you further away from the traffic light, church entrance, and River Cove.
That's right.
Is the space in the middle, is that open space for all the new residents, or is that going with the farmhouse?
So on this particular option, it looks like the open space would be part of the farmhouse property, but that could be reconfigured as well to be community property, moving forward.
I definitely recommend considering that because recreation opportunities, especially in that area of town, there's not a lot of public services and parks.
What, was there something in the, that you were going to put in trails and maybe trying to connect to other town walkways?
Yeah, so we were trying to find where the nearest trail head really would be, or how we would connect there. There could be a trail that looped around the entire parcel, kind of along the exterior of the parcel, to give community members just a place to walk or walk their dog or ride their bike if you have. There is a 6-foot walkway across from 2A on the west side. So that has some connectivity to other, pedestrian access.
Dangerous crossing.
Yeah, right, gotta cross the road first.
Exactly, and we're still trying to figure out how that could be done safely. Exactly.
You definitely need the blinky crossing lights.
Right,
If
yeah.
not, yeah.
So I guess V-Trans will do the traffic study, and you have the wetland ecologist, and that will inform how to actually set up, which version of this is closest. So I think if we go to findings and recommendations, or did you want to look at Google Earth? Okay.
Is there a way to make that bigger, Mandy, or no?
yeah.
My
No
vision is
way.
not that great.
Yeah, you could even expand that side of the screen, so we don't need to see ourselves a lot.
There you go, thank you.
Okay,
It's all secure.
yeah, as we mentioned, this project is in the RCD. And I know that there are some neighbors in their comments who are very concerned about any wildlife they see in that field, but it's designated as low priority for conservation.
It's pretty cut off from.
Yeah, I
any
mean, there are
significant
houses
habitat.
all around it. No desired trails. It is a high-risk development for watershed health. Because the land disturbance will exceed 2 acres. And so a Vermont State Wetlands Advisory is present in the southeast part of the site, and so that will be addressed. The proposed project is not anticipated to impact any significant wildlife habitat areas, uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species, unique natural communities, farmlands of local importance, scenic view sheds, special flood hazard areas of streams. It is nice, it's not a scenic view shed, but it is nice if the barn and the house are there. That, I think that really adds to.
Yeah, the visual buffer of having the historical. House and barn at the roadside, I think will lead to it looking nicer.
Yeah, what's the age of the house and barn? Do you know, Jamie?
I don't know the exact age, sorry, but it is, it's quite old.
That's neat. Okay, so let's go to recommendations. The applicant needs to submit a professionally prepared runoff and erosion control plan as part of the discretionary permit application. Is that okay with you, Jamie?
Yes,
A wetland delineation for the proposed development must be prepared by a professional wetland scientist, and the site plan submitted with a discretionary permit application shall show all wetlands on the property. Class 2 wetlands must be depicted with associated 50-foot buffers. And I know you said that you were going to have that done. 3, proposed development must not encroach into any watershed protection buffers identified. If watershed protection buffers are identified, they must be clearly demarcated on the site plan and on the ground to prevent future disturbance. So with boulders or fences. So does anyone have a comment on the findings and recommendations?
Hey,
Reed?
Laura,
I just, oh, go ahead.
Gary.
Well, I was just gonna say it's a little bit difficult for me to make much of an assessment of this without the wetland delineation. It seems like that's a valuable component that we need to look at so that we can, make some judgments about where different housing units are placed.
This is pre-app, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll see it again. Discretionary permit with. The wetlands delineated.
Yeah.
Does that work for you, Gary?
Just a second, I gotta unmute. Yeah, it works. I mean, it's just in a way, not as useful anytime we see them. It's nice to know if there's wetlands and where they are and how they fit in.
Yeah, and especially since it has to be submitted with a discretionary permit. It seems like that's what we ought to be looking at.
At this point, we're just sharing what potential concerns or constraints we see, and it sounds like recommendation number 2 covers that we a delineation is going to be required to determine the wetlands aspect. Is there any reason to, or is there any way in which the Jacob parcel plans should be considered here? I'm looking at you a little bit, Melinda, because you thought about that a lot.
I'll bring up Google Earth. Is that in the budding property?
It's not.
It's on the other side of the
I just know that
houses to the east.
it would at least be good for them to be familiar with the fact that the town now owns the parcel because it's behind on the other side of the neighborhood. Jamie, are you aware of the Jacob parcel that the town recently purchased back to the east?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
On the
What's this one?
screen share, you can see it. It's kind of like a, I don't know.
It's,
Jake.
A glove shape.
see where my cursor is?
I do.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that,
it's
that
that
parcel was recently acquired by the town.
Wow, that's great.
And we have been trying for the last couple of years to figure out how it could be utilized for recreational purposes and access. But just be aware that that's there and that the town is trying to figure out how. You can see that it's a couple parcels away, so I just was wanting to make sure the Conservation Commission, in case there were any comments about how your development could potentially help in any way or benefit in any way
Sure.
from the funds there.
One thing I will note is that you see the right below Cody Rice's parcel there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so right along that property line, there is the driveway that I showed on my plan, which
Oh.
serves the two parcels just to the south. But it also has an extended roadway that continues as an emergency access for Bittersweet Circle. So there is some connectivity there already. There's a gated gravel drive
Oh,
right on the, yep, right on the corner of Bittersweet Circle there to the north of
Okay.
that last house. Yes, there it is.
How far down does that go?
I think just right to there. it connects
That's
to the
correct.
emergency.
I was out, I don't know, a few years ago, I went out to the end of Bittersweet just to see if there was any possibility for access, and there's this really steep ravine
Okay.
right here, so it's not,
It's not ideal.
it's not ideal, it's, yeah.
We're just always thinking of ways because it's a potential asset for residents to have recreation. But it's in kind of a tough spot, so glad that you're at least now aware of it.
Great.
I did the same thing, Linda, several years ago, and it was tough slide.
Can we, I'm sorry, can we zoom out just like a tiny bit?
Zoom out.
Yeah, like, yeah, just a tiny bit. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to get a sense of like how residents could access otherwise, but it,
Right, so, we were, we've been sort of pondering this access from Trinity Baptist, that may
Right.
be a while in coming because, who knows when or if that development will actually
Yeah.
get approved, and go through. But they were talking about putting in a little parking area here with a trail, easement. And then we already have a trail easement along this side of Bittersweet. There's also, let me see. There's also an easement across this area here somewhere. From Morgan Parkway. And so there's a potential, but there's not really a
There's no
parking area
parking.
per se, it's just, it would be alongside the road and I think the easement goes from there's like a little town-owned parcel here with the pump station, and I think there's like a sort of a social trail that goes from there over to Jacob parcel. So there's a few different options, but
Nothing
right
has
now, nothing is
materialized.
formalized,
Yeah.
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 There's also somebody, there's an informal trail from someone's backyard over here that goes across the power line and into the parcel.
Well, it would be easy to walk. I can't, is there a sidewalk on that side of the road from the parcel to the road that you can then walk to the end? I mean, that, if they wanted to walk there, that would be an easy way to do it.
You mean walk to, it gets you to Bittersweet?
No, if you go north on 2A, just that one parcel.
To the entrance to the neighborhood behind.
Yeah,
Oh, you
and
mean
then
this,
just walk,
yeah.
yeah, back there.
There could be a consideration in terms of the connectivity that you make to other adjacent parcels. The fact that there might be a desire for pedestrian traffic to the north, past the church, and then up into the neighborhood where there's might be future access to the Jacob parcel.
So yeah, going down Morgan Parkway and then.
On foot, it's no problem that people going there, it's just there's not
Right.
parking, so.
Right.
Well, I don't, is that open, is that access to down behind there open to the public even by foot?
Well, it's an easement that the town has, so
We could
technically, yeah,
formalize it.
we could formalize it into a trail. And the easement sort of, it kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
And
It sort of got us off topic, but thanks for entertaining the
Well, yeah,
thought.
at least Jamie knows about it.
Yeah.
So.
I do.
I'll move approval of the findings and recommendations as written.
Thank you, Reed. Is there a
I'll
second?
Second.
Oh,
So I
dueling
had a-
seconds.
I had just another question.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I'm gonna get back to the notes. Here we go. So I appreciate that the applicant will have to do a wetland assessment for the right materials for the discretionary permit. I was looking at the comment from the person who's a member of the church to the north, and their comment and concern about drainage and stormwater runoff. And looking at the map on Google Earth, it does look like there is a lot of runoff that heads northward through the farm field. So I hope that the applicant can address those concerns, because that increasing all of that, converting all that farm field into impervious surface area will significantly increase the amount of water headed off that property. And then the other question I had was, I haven't driven by there since I knew that this parcel was up on this agenda for today, but I'm remembering a giant patch of Phragmites, and it might be in front of the church and not on this property, but if it is on this property, I'd love to see something in the plan to address Phragmites on this parcel. And maybe even proactively work with the church as well to the north.
Yeah, to do like a removal and replanting of native wetland species.
Yeah, and that stormwater pond will quickly fill in with Phragmites. If not.
It's a good thought.
Yeah, so I mean, to try to maybe address both those issues, for this type of project, it's large enough in scale where we would need to have a Vermont stormwater permit, which obviously would address any of the runoff created from new impervious, and that would be directed to a treatment area. And that's kind of what we were showing as a loose shape in that middle portion. Currently what's there, everything essentially, as you saw from the topography, drains to the north. And right now there's an existing ditch essentially between the church and the applicant's parcel. And so that ditch line intercepts all the runoff and then carries it to the west to the roadside ditch on Essex Road. So that's how the current drainage pattern works. So we wouldn't be changing it much other than the fact that we would probably end up treating it, any of the impervious and slowing it down with a slow release, so that it wouldn't have such an impact on the ditch line on the roadside.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other comments?
So Eric's comment about the Phragmites, should we put anything in the recommendations about or just in the findings even about wanting, I guess the findings are, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but should we put anything about wanting to see what the plan is for invasive species. As
I
part of the
think-
development.
I think so we don't forget it.
Yeah.
We should put it. So,
It could be under the recommendations that.
Yeah.
That, the stormwater and landscaping plans address invasive species.
yeah, it could just be a fourth recommendation.
It's a recommendation, we probably ought to put it in findings, it's usually the recommendation.
I'm not sure if this helps at all, but it's looking at the site and the low slope of the site overall, it's likely that the treatment device or the treatment practice that will help with the stormwater runoff, it's likely going to be what's called a gravel wetland. So I'm not sure if that plays a role into your decisions or factors into what vegetation would be planted in that wetland.
Yeah, could we stick it on to recommendation 2, Simon, and
I've just dropped a suggestion in the chat.
Yeah, so Eric wrote, for findings. There may be significant stands of invasive species on the parcel, especially
Okay, perfect.
Phragmites, and then recommendation. Applicant should provide an invasive species mitigation plan for the parcel, particularly for Phragmite.
okay, yeah, that can be a number 4 then for recommendations.
So it's Phragmites as an indication of wetlands. Usually class 3,
Yeah, I was
2,
gonna say,
is that usually, it's not indicating an extremely wet.
Right.
so we have, I'll amend my motion, so I'll move to approve findings and recommendations as amended with Eric's suggested recommendation number 7 and, sorry, finding number 7 and recommendation number 4.
Okay, great, and a second to that,
I'll second.
and thanks, Gary. Okay, any more comments on the findings and recommendations? Okay, all those in favor of approving the amended findings and recommendations signified by saying aye.
I
Does anyone abstain? Okay. I think everyone is on board. Thank you very much, Jamie. Good luck with this.
Thank you.
So did you want to look at the wetlands?
Yeah, let's do that.
Um,
I didn't have time to actually look at it.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, really, this is just an FYI that the DEC wetlands is revising their wetland maps, and I think because my fault, I didn't put this on the agenda ahead of time. I mean, we can cruise around and take a look at them, but I would suggest that each of you like kind of look at them on your own and submit your comments as you see fit. So, you know, basically
Did you
there's.
notice
really-
any significant changes for Williston's mapping?
I did.
You did see some changes that impact us. I know that this is something we've been talking about wanting
Right.
to have better upfront information where we can about existing wetlands, even for properties that haven't come before
Yeah,
through a discretionary permit
right.
delineation.
A couple of things that I noticed, is that, so this is where the Allenbrook Nature Trail is. They've mapped this whole area as well. And there is some upland in there, so I don't know, that may be something about, and also that we know that there are wetlands back here in the town-owned parcel and there's nothing mapped, and
It was recently, I guess it may not have been a delineation as much as a on the ground assessment or something, I don't know what.
Well, it had been delineated in 2012 because for the town's solar array. And we just had it redelineated this spring for the town, new town nature trail. So that was a new delineation that you saw, but I was surprised to see that even the old delineation is not showing up here.
Interesting. So, for all the pre-apps that we've done and all the areas where their, class 2 wetlands have been found, are they just in our records and they don't go to the state?
Well, the state should have those because all of those get confirmed by the state.
Right,
So,
okay, all right.
That's what I was gonna say, that I was about to ask, well, who has those delineations, so we can point them to it, and then I said, wait, it's probably the state.
Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, it's some kind of a process issue here, I guess, I don't know, but,
Yeah, unfortunately, you
yeah.
would have to look at like which parcels we have reviewed recently to point them to the delineations that are missing, but it would be great to not lose the information that we collected or that was collected as part of those delineations.
I mean, I guess it could be a question that we ask the state wetlands office is, you know, how is this done? Do you have access to all the historic records of wetland delineations that were confirmed by the state? Were those brought in and used for this new layer, just to find out more about their process?
Simon, is that something that you could reach out to them and ask?
Yeah, and just mention that we're surprised we don't see the wetland delineations that we know about on the map.
Yeah,
Gary's hand is up.
But
Oh,
I
go
get, you
ahead,
may,
Gary.
well, you may have already answered it. I was just gonna ask how these data were gathered. I mean, were they done through remote sensing from satellites or what? It looks very specific, so it's hard to believe that it would be done totally remote.
It looks a lot more like a collection of delineations than it does
I wonder if it's.
satellite data.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
if it says anything on here, probably not. I would assume this also has metadata with it somewhere.
so Melinda, can you go to that site we were just talking about?
Which site?
Well, the site we were just talking that
There's-
submission that we just
parcel.
discussed. Yeah, just so it'd be
That's
interesting
very
to
good.
glance at that,
Hold on. I can get
just
there.
as an example.
Yeah,
So that would be somewhere up here, and it looks like
Nothing.
there's nothing. I was gonna take a look because there's a general fact sheet.
It probably says how they
it
get it.
says many are not shown on the current map.
State will update the maps to include more significant wetlands that exist now, so you can easily find them. Okay. Huh. Show wetlands in the wrong location. May have to look at the more detailed. Let me see, I'm just curious, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take a look at the more detailed fact sheet.
Yeah, that one looks a little bit more public oriented. That's for my business.
It's not really, oh, I see methodology, using the current wetland advisory layer is the basis for adding and editing polygons. Only those advisory polygons which meet the wetland types above and those contiguous with existing DSWI polygons will be added. Distribution of map updates is not even the state. So it sounds like they may not be looking at the delineated wetlands that they.
It may be out of scope for this update.
Yeah, maybe.
Even if it is out of scope for this update, it's something that we can at least explore whether they could include them.
Yeah,
It'd probably be a lot of work.
yeah,
It's like, I mean, they have to track delineations that are being done, they have to track whether they've been added. So
yeah.
it's a lot of overhead, I can understand.
I mean, I can understand because just even doing it for the town of Williston is a lot of work, so I can understand if they're doing this for the entire state, that it's probably not feasible to collect all of the
Yeah.
delineated wetlands all across the state, and I mean, that would be.
As useful as it would be.
As useful as it
Yeah.
would be, but anyway,
Can you send a link to this? So, I didn't get anything. Did you send something?
Simon did yesterday.
I can send it again.
Okay, great. Let me see.
One that I saw you there.
so anybody else want to look at?
So well, it might be good to just get Tina in here for an upcoming meeting. I can talk to our new chair about that, I guess, but
Gonna have to be
What-
real soon because she's expecting a baby.
oh,
Right,
really?
she's
Well,
going on maternity leave very soon.
well, then maybe
so,
we get Laura. Is Laura still in charge of the wetlands program?
so,
Lapierre. Anyway, the reason I'm chiming in here is so I went on to the DEC's main wetlands page, and right on the main landing page for wetlands, they have big bold letters, growing season has begun and verification of wetland boundaries may commence. When we ask for wetland evaluations or whatever on our parcels, we don't usually require that it happen within a certain season, do we? Yeah.
well, the wetlands, I mean, it's by default, the wetlands department would only confirm during the appropriate season. They wouldn't do a confirmation if it was winter.
Okay, I thought it was like sometimes we ask the applicant to hire a consultant to do a site visit and an assessment, and I feel like that has happened, but maybe I'm thinking of wildlife and not wetlands.
Well, yeah, so the consultant will do the delineation and the assessment, but then it has to get confirmed by the state, and
Okay.
consultants would normally not do that work in the winter time. They would have to do it.
Right.
in season.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, yeah, I think if we each individually take a look at this and see if there's anything to add.
Okay.
All right. So I just wanted to mention that and I can go over this with Simon, but I have an ongoing list of kind of, trails, some things completed, some things that are still ongoing, business unfinished and future. And I can send that to everybody because in the next meeting, we're talking about what we want to do for 2023. So, and I also want to send it because if I didn't remember something, you can, or if there's another idea, you can put it on there or mention it.
And just kind of as a FYI, so we're coming up on starting, believe it or not, the next town plan. So like later this year, we're gonna be starting to do outreach for the 2025 town plan, so maybe think
Sure,
about.
that would have been helpful to know before I volunteered to be chair, but
Yeah, so think about, kind of like what kind of outreach you might want to do for that upcoming town plan. Yeah,
Yeah, things like having an event highlighting the sections of the town plan that relate to conservation,
And the wildlife habitat
wildlife and habitat.
crossings map.
Take a look at our current maps, take a look at the process that we go through to update them.
I wonder if we could do that at the green up day. I mean, is that too late?
For next year,
That might be okay.
no,
It's just because outreach starts later this year, doesn't mean it will be
yeah, I mean,
over.
if you kind of work backward from. Like,
24.
yeah, so, we'll wanna probably be getting a draft of the town plan to the select board. They'll need a good, I don't know, 6 months at least to kind of go through and look at it. So if it's due in 2025, we'll be wanting to get them a draft by, kind of 2024, maybe after budget season, 2024. And then, so, yeah, so around early next year or spring next year, we're gonna be, in the process of drafting those chapters.
No, that project also include development bylaws.
No.
When does that get reviewed?
Well, so bylaws typically are sort of a piecemeal kind of revision process. I mean, we've undergone a series of bylaw revisions over like the last, few years, and form-based code is one such revision.
They're ad hoc through the planning commission.
Yeah.
Anytime a revision is recommended to the planning commission, they review it and determine whether it's appropriate to put in front of the select board,
Right.
basically.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we don't have to wait for any particular cycle.
No, it's mostly like just waiting for when the planning commission has an opening to consider new bylaw amendments. And, they've been pretty consumed with form-based code over the last, like, really year and a half. And then after form-based code is done, they're gonna be considering bylaw revisions for the village, so that's probably gonna take a big chunk of time. But, it is like, Conservation Commission, if you choose to work on some bylaw amendments, you can do that, and then they may just be on hold for a little bit until Planning Commission gets a chance to consider them.
So there's been a lot of public comment lately about how overdeveloped people think Williston is and how come the town's letting that happen. So if you were a citizen that thought that and wanted to affect some change, how would an ordinary citizen initiate that? Develop changes in development that would limit it more than we do.
Well, I think, there have been times in the last few years, and Terry, you can speak to this, when there was, concern about development of the RZD and lack of open space, and so the committee that you sort of helped resurrect, the Citizens for Responsible Growth, I guess, initiated a potential, you were interested in seeing a bylaw requirement for a quantitative requirement for open space in the RZD. So that's something that the Planning Commission did look at and then ultimately decided to table. So I think, it really takes, it takes citizens who are motivated to get involved. And then it takes,
The town plan and the planning commission, or the town plan cycle, which is a
Yeah.
good time to be involved.
right,
Because the town plan informs the planning commission's decisions about
Yeah.
amendments to bylaws. So if the town plan says things like we want to preserve more of the rural character within, more of the historic character within the RZD, then that can inform changes to the unified development bylaw.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a good point, in that the town plan really sets the framework for future changes in the bylaw, and bylaw changes, they need to be supported by the goals of the town plan.
If the town plan says that we're going to encourage density in the top corners area, then you can't then amend your bylaws reasonably to say that we're gonna limit density in the top corner.
Right, right, and I think that, there need, I think the bylaw amendments need to be informed by, basically good planning and a knowledge that the town has limited control over, like, the forces of growth, in other words, like, what causes growth in Williston? It's, the fact that we're at the nexus of two state highways and the interstate. That's what originally spurred growth. The fact that there's lots of property owners in town who have large properties and they want some value out of those properties, and there are property rights that are enshrined in state statute, and that the town has only the town has very specific powers to enact bylaws and legislation. Those are granted by state statute.
Yeah, you can regulate this, you cannot regulate
Right,
that.
exactly. So any bylaw, any proposed changes in the bylaw have to be informed by the state statutes and have to be supported by the town plan.
Do the state statutes ever get reviewed and
Sure, yeah,
changed?
every legislative season, there's changes in state statute,
For development?
for development and a lot of other things, but yeah, that's a whole process.
I guess I'd just like to speak about it. So you were asking in general for working up to the town plan, just local people to get involved.
Well, I was just curious to see how one did want to do that. How they would about it.
So when the CRG started, it was in response to the article that Matt put out in the, planner's corner about the Glacier property, actually, and how there was going to be 200-300 houses.
And that was really kind
It
of
was a spook.
It was a spook, yeah.
So anyway, so there were a lot of people that, were concerned, and, then they said, no, that's what could happen. So here we are, years later, that piece is getting developed.
Exactly.
So the group formed and, people were like, what can we do? What can we do? And Matt and the planning board, staff came and made a presentation and said, this is how it works. You get involved, this is how all the process works, the planning commission and the, DRB and this and that. And so the group decided, okay, what can we do, as a group to make some change? So we decided that, we could start with that area, the RZD, because that's where the original concern was. And just to make it short, there was just frustration. We got to the point where we made the presentation to the planning board, the planning staff took it over. And most of the people felt that they did a lot of work and really put in their time, but they weren't listened to. And the planning commission just said they did a lot of work getting information, but in the end, they said just flat out kind of no. And the people in the group really got frustrated because it was like, here we go again. This cycle is again, a few people kind of make some noise, and then the town is like, what are we gonna do? And then it's like, then they're like, well, they'll go. We won't have to deal with them, and that group will go. So that was hard for that group to have put in all that time, and then basically there was no compromise. I mean, the town basically said, okay, ask for 50% open space. And we were all 50%. That's a lot, and they just said, no, let's just do that. But then in the end, there was no real compromise. It was like, no, well, how about 10? How about 20? How about 30? It was just, nope. So that's what happened with that. group.
I think
That's-
And maybe, you know, maybe it's worth going back and looking at those meetings. But my understanding was the planning commission just felt like they weren't sure whether the goals that were intended would be accomplished by just by just establishing quantitative requirement for open space in the RCD. So given that they had questions about it, and they just weren't sure whether that would accomplish the goals.
And they did get, I must say, so I think it was Emily or so the staff put together a questionnaire survey
Right.
and they got 70 pages.
Yeah. a
And
lot of
that's
response.
70
Yeah.
responses, 70 pages of responses, and most of them were help, this town is just going
Yeah,
to, we're gonna turn into another South Burlington or Essex.
Mhm.
And I must say, the planning board has took that information and has listened. They know that the Williston residents are weary of development and.
Yeah, and so I do think that the town plan, that's gonna be that's gonna be a
Yeah.
place for people.
so the town plan is really the next step, so
Mhm.
basically the question of how do we control the growth rate in the RZD? The answer was under the current town plan, under the current bylaws, it's behaving the way it was intended to behave. So the outcome is the intended outcome. And the town plan revision for 2024 is the next opportunity to change the vision, if at all, for
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. And if the vision shifts a little bit, then the bylaws would need to shift to use the right tools to
Right.
get the results that the town plan calls for.
Right, and for example, like the boundary of the RCD has not changed in 30, 40 years, right? So if there is a strong sentiment, maybe there's a strong sentiment, maybe people want to change that boundary.
Maybe there's like a dense RZD and a semi-rural RZD, and maybe it's split
Right.
up, and it's like in this area, we're gonna require 60% open space, and in this area, there's no open space requirement because we're gonna divide the dense from the not, but I mean, there's many different ways it could be done. It's about finding the consensus with residents and then finding the right tools to achieve
Yeah.
what you're trying to do.
And right now, there's, there's, talk on Front Porch Forum about this 60-foot, high buildings and, there's just more outcry about, development and things. And, yeah, there was an opportunity. I mean, they've been working on this for the last 2 years.
Right.
But it's the one way to get involved. And what is why I'm sitting here today is that, we realized that, forming that committee, that group, I should say that group, wasn't really the way to make change. It was actually to get on the committees.
Yeah, I mean, the work that you're doing with the Conservation Commission and with the Catamount is making a difference.
And there's somebody that joined the, what do they call that? Hack out of that group. So, so it was, we realized that, just to be involved and to get people more active on groups and.
Yeah, thanks for doing all that. Thanks for getting people involved.
And it certainly started a conversation.
Yeah, right. Well,
Well,
that's better than
still,
none.
yeah.
Yeah,
The very fact that Carl's asking that question shows that
right.
the formation of the group and the engagement with the town, it's not that it didn't result in anything, it hasn't resulted in a change, the bylaw change yet. But the fact that
that's
somebody's asking means that it has started a conversation, right? And that town regulations are supposed to change slowly. If they change fast, it's too jerky and nobody can. The environment becomes too hectic for people to want to live here, to want to develop businesses and build homes in the town. So you want it to move slowly, but you just have to do long-term steady pressure
change things.
And I think for our group, it was COVID too. So
Well, yeah.
once we got to go, then COVID hit.
Put a damper on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who stayed on the Conservation Commission through all that. I mean, especially with young children. Wow. So, anyway, so, we actually have something for Carl, a little present. For you. If you want to open it.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Carl.
We need to name something. The next park needs to be named the Rogers
Yes.
Memorial Park.
Yes, yeah,
Today, Gary, yeah.
that's great.
Oh, something you could definitely use.
Definitely.
So I gotta tell you,
Beat this one.
you know what, Carl, these are the best. I have one and I just love it because you can take off the entire top and put lots of ice in it.
Mhm, yeah.
Or you can just take off,
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
that, and drink out of it. It's really neat.
Yeah. Very nice.
Oh, that's great.
Much appreciated.
That'll be great for going out birding.
I was gonna say, bird watching. Does it do cold, hot?
Yeah, I
cold,
think
or-
it does both and you can put it in the dishwasher even.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all your years.
And a little sack.
Yeah.
So, are you going back to Georgia or what are your plans for the summer?
Oh, the summer, well, July is going to be very busy with visitors coming.
Oh, great.
Visitors from Spain for a couple of weeks and then hopefully we'll spend the end of July. So I'm not looking beyond that, looking for a little rest.
It's wonderful.
Are the visitors from Spain family or friends or both?
Well, it's kind of a long story. It's a couple, and the woman of which was an exchange student when she was a teenager to Deb's family. So, and she has retained a great love for Deb's mother. And was, maintained that relationship ever since. And Deb's mother is 101 and
Oh,
Wow,
like she's slipping. So they're gonna maybe also.
nice.
that'll be special.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, summer's special in a lot of ways anyway.
Yes, for sure.
I hope we still keep doing, things like the bobbling project and.
Yeah, do that for a while.
Yeah.
And a while turned into what, 35 years? Is that
32 years.
32 years?
Maybe wondering why I stayed on it that long.
That's basically my entire life, you understand that?
I gotta say, I have stayed on it that long because this is probably the most favorite committee that I've ever been on. I've been on a lot of boards and other committees, but this has been my favorite, and it's due to two basic things, and that is the people that have been on it over the years. It just has struck me that compared to any other committee I've been on, the collegiality and working in harmony in this committee has been the greatest of any of the committees I've been on. So that's one reason. And the other reason we stayed on so long is that this committee has been blessed with fantastic conservation planners from the town. It seems like in each one, well, with a couple of exceptions, each one is seemed even better than the
One
one.
was rough around the edges.
But anyway, Melinda has been the best of all of them, so I'd probably say now,
You're too
extra
kind.
couple of years,
Yeah,
just because of this.
and because the treasury job got easier, so.
Yeah.
It's not the time to give up.
Then you might be asking, if you like it so much, how can you quit now? And there's a simple answer to that too, and that is that age 85, the motor is running down. The motor that runs my brain, my eyes, my ears, my feet is running down, and I just don't have the energy to put into it that I have in past years. And I think it's time for some younger blood, with fresh ideas.
Carl, I need to run, but thanks for all of your work and your dedication to this over the last 30 years. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know that I'm going to make it 30 years, but you've provided some good inspiration. So it's been great to get to know you, and hopefully we'll see you around.
The comment will be open.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I just want to say too that Carl, I'm amazed at how you've been able to keep up your high level of concern and work throughout that entire time period. So how much of that time were you the treasurer, Carl?
Oh, God, I don't know. It fades, memory of that fades.
Yeah, so it's a long time.
For, I don't know, 15, 20 years anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, Gary.
No, I just wanted to thank you. I think much of that time I've been on too, so I've seen you
Hey, that's right.
consistently helping and devoted to the tasks of this committee. It's been great.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you're not as old as I am, Gary, but I think you and I have been the old timers on the committee.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
How many years are you now, Gary?
I don't know. When did you join? What year, Carl?
1990.
Yeah, I think I was 1 or 2 years later, maybe 92 or 93, somewhere in there.
Wow.
There you go.
Seen a lot of change.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's been really rewarding to be on this committee because we get things done too. I mean, we've done some pretty substantial work with conserving, and we're fortunate to have the ARF fund to help with that. It's been great.
Yeah, an extensive trail network that's been to the point where we're not sure we can sustain more trails in the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a lot of work.
It's been a ride.
Hey, Carl, can my kids and I ask you a bird question before we lose our opportunity to solicit your expertise on a regular basis?
Sure, go ahead.
We have a birdhouse that Nico got at his like Audubon Forest School, and house wrens moved into it, and we can hear that there are chicks in it. And we want to peek in and see if we can see the chicks, but we don't know how they'll handle that. Do you think it's safe to see if we can see the chicks, or should we let them be and not try to get too close?
Oh,
I don't know if you heard Nico yell, "Daddy did it."
well, I guess I would say you don't try to get too close. But actually, Gary's had more experience with dealing with birdhouses than I had. Gary, do you have any comments about that?
Does it have an easy way to open it?
No, it's just got like the tiny little hole. You'd have to like get up real close to it.
Yeah, I would, I guess when you see the mother bird fly out, that would be an opportunity to just take a quick look. But you don't want the mother or father to be off the nest for too long. So it would have to be a really quick look.
Sort of stressed.
Okay.
Invasion. I have another bird question. We saw a red start I've never seen one that I can remember in my entire life, and we saw one last week. Have you seen them here in Williston
Oh, yeah.
regularly? I don't watch as much as you do, or know what to look for as much as you do. That was pretty good.
They're pretty regular breeding warbler, they come north with the rest of the warblers, many of which keep moving north. It starts, at least some of them stick around in this area breeding.
My son has a sticker book for kid bird watchers. So it has a whole center page of like 50 stickers of different birds, and then on the other pages it has numbers. So when you see the bird, you can look at the number on it, take it to that page, put it on that page, and then write down where you saw it and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
He's about 15 birds into his book.
Good for him.
Yeah, yeah, and he'll be outside and he'll say, hear that? That's a chickadee. And you'll see a cowbird fly into
neat.
the garden or whatever, so that's a cowbird. Very cool.
That is really neat.
Have you remember their call? It's a way that you, for the Red Star.
I don't have their call in my head.
Someone said, listen for, I need a tissue. I need a tissue. Over and
No,
over.
there's a lot of mnemonics for
Yeah.
bird calls that do help you remember.
So that helps.
Yeah, but one of the big things lately that people get pretty excited about is an app that you can put on your phone called Merlin. And it records bird songs by sonogram. So if you're out listening and you hear a song that you don't know, you turn
Ask
on that
Merlin.
app and it prints out the sonogram, and as it's doing that, it identifies the species.
Yeah, I think Chapin just got that because the other day, that was how we confirmed, that I saw it and
I see.
and Bailey, my son, saw it, and then we weren't sure what it was, and then he was recording, and he said, yep, it was a red star, and then it flew back, and we saw it again.
That's pretty neat. So what does the other day I heard something and I turned on Merlin and it was a yellow bill.
Wow.
And it gave me a little red circle, like half filled in. Does that mean it's rare or?
No, that means that's Merlin saying, I think it might be a yellow bill.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But as a blue circle, Merlin's
Confirmed.
more so.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean, certainly could be pretty distinctive.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I just,
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been noticing is having a much harder time picking up birds by sight and getting to the birds with my binoculars than I used to have. So I'm relying more on sound than I used to.
Yep.
And thank God for hearing aids, because without that I couldn't hear anything.
He could turn them up, and he adjust them.
And now Merlin,
Yeah.
let you know that what's
Yeah.
there, yeah.
that's great.
Well, Carl, I'm gonna check out, but thanks again, and don't hesitate to visit our committee meetings if you're in
I
town
know,
sometime.
I've been thinking of that. I mean, it's gonna be hard not to be up at 7 o'clock. Every 32 years. So I may
Yeah,
join in as a silent observer.
yes, great. Well, take care, everyone. See you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I will officially adjourn the meeting just to be able. Time for adjourning.
Simon, I hope Simon did feel compelled to take all the bird notes.
Plenty of life left.
I probably have to run too. Thank you so much, Carl. We'll miss you for sure. Hope to see you
Thanks, Kim.
around town and at Catamount.
For sure. Thank you.
Bye, Kim.
Bye, Kim.
So what was your most?
Bye.
memorable- What was your most memorable thing on the Conservation Commission in 32 years? Like, what was that? This thing